What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Geeks from the Multiverse. I'm Matt. With me, as always, is John.
What up, y'all?
Welcome back. I don't know what episode we're on. Whatever. I stopped counting.
It's episode 8, man. It's okay. I know your old brain doesn't always work sometimes, so.
I stopped counting. But welcome back to the show, and we're so glad that you've joined us again. And we have a lot in store for you guys. And today we're going to be doing, I believe, round 4 of Superfight? Round 3?
No, it's round 3, man. And guess what? Reigning champ's still here, buddy, because, first round, I won it.
Technicality.
Oh, you know what? Here's the thing.
We had a draw last time.
Yeah, we had a draw, but still, I still have 1 win, so that's all I'm going to say right now.
So we are going to do round 3 of Superfight, and then we're going to be talking about our Marvel Phase 3, which does have a lot of information. So we're going to get right into it. But before we start, I did want to kind of address some news from the Star Wars kind of universe, because they did announce some new movies.
So I know, Matt and I were talking before this, but there was a new movie that they're trying to make. I didn't really know what it was, but it was like Alkalite. And I know that Matt's going to have some more information on some of the hopefully newer ones that are going to be coming out too. So
yes, there are 3 that they just announced. I just saw them, I think, yesterday. And the 3 movies that they have announced basically is going to be, the first one is set 25,000 years before everything. And it's going to be based in the Old Republic. And what they say is that the director basically says it's going to be kind of like a biblical epic of a movie.
So it's kind of like when you mentioned the whole video games, like the Old Republic games they used to play. So it's probably going to be very similar, I would hope.
I hope
to
so,
that.
yeah. So the second movie that they're making is actually going to be helmed by Dave Filoni. And it's going to kind of accomplish the final of the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka TV series, but it's going to kind of end that New Republic kind of theme.
Well, wait, so I'm confused. So is Dave Filoni the guy that, made The Mandalorian? It was technically Jon Favreau that was directing it and doing that, but is Dave the one that actually created the shows wise?
He, I believe, is a producer, but he is one of the people that is involved in the show.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
And the last movie that they're making is going to be set 15 years after Rise of Skywalker, and it's going to be a new Jedi Order.
So basically, Rey taking on the responsibility of creating the new Jedi Order, right?
Right. And they did announce that the actress who played Rey is going to be in that movie.
Well, see, that I feel like will hopefully redeem some of the later trilogy of the 7, 8, 9, kind of saga.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that it really does it justice.
I'm actually really excited for Dave Filoni's movie, because with Ahsoka coming out, Thrawn, who's a huge villain in the books and in the animated series.
So I don't want to go into it real far, but I will say that when we will have a Star Wars episode at some point,
yes,
and the people that will be joining us, I know that will be a very interesting topic to talk about the books and everything else about.
And that's what I'm hoping is, with Ahsoka coming out and Thrawn being part of that series, and then Dave Filoni also making a movie. I'm seriously hoping that with Ahsoka and the movie, that a lot of what now is not canon, that a lot of it becomes canon again.
Right.
So, all right. So without further ado, let's get geeky.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're gonna do round 4 of Superfight. Round 3. I'm sorry. I keep thinking round 4. You know what?
It's round 3. Remember,
it is round 3. To minimize the time to pick our cards and everything, we've already pre-selected the 3 cards for our characters and our powers or weaknesses.
But we don't right now know what they are, so we want to make that very clear.
We do not know our characters or what our powers or weaknesses are going to be. So, John, why don't you pick your character?
Okay. Eeny, meeny, miny, I choose you. Okay. Ooh, I got a vampire.
Oh, a vampire, huh? All right, let's see. 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to go with number 1 here.
Oh, God. Yes. Okay. What is it?
Boy.
What is it?
Rage zombies.
Oh, God. Really? 2 undead folks? Okay, that's great. All right, wonderful.
So I got some rage zombies.
Okay, so he's got multiple. All right, so I'm gonna choose my hopefully power. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I choose you. Let's try this one. This is gonna be interesting. Has two extra arms.
So you're like a vampire Goro?
Yes, I'm gonna be a vampire Goro in this case.
I'm going to choose the middle one here.
What's he get? What's he get?
Okay, so apparently my rage zombies now are wearing a robotic exoskeleton.
Crap. That doesn't help me, but okay. So again, let's see. Any money, meeny money. I choose you. Ooh. Okay, this might help. Has an invisibility cloak.
All right, so let's go with the third card. I guess I'm going to go with number 3 on this one.
Oh, what is he? Oh, okay. Is it good or bad? Because
apparently my rage zombies who are wearing robotic exoskeletons is actually a ghost and can only be killed when their physical remains are destroyed. So
how does that work?
Good luck with that, John.
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Eeny, meeny, money. I choose you. This is a good one. I'm gonna be very surprised. So good luck, Matt. Is 100 stories tall.
That doesn't mean anything.
Okay, and it depends on how many zombies you have too. Because it doesn't actually say like how many. So I mean, if it's like hordes, like thousands or like
So
whatever.
if you probably never watched the movie 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later, right?
So I do remember seeing 28 Days Later. I don't think I've actually seen 28 Weeks. I do remember a little bit on 28 Days though.
So I mean, one, it doesn't tell you the number, but I have watched both movies, and what I know from zombie movies, and I'm a huge fan of zombies, if you didn't already know, John.
You don't say.
And what I do know about these particular zombies is, one, they're not like the Night of the Living Dead zombies where they're slow moving.
Oh, so these guys are, like,
zombies
running.
will actually run after you and chase you. So, and with this virus, it literally took over a pretty good percentage of the population. So, even if you are 100 stories tall, there's still a possibility that the sheer number of how many there are can still take you down.
Well,
and we have robotic exoskeletons.
True, but just keep in mind though, you still have one more card. So let's see if it's a weakness or if it's actually gonna.
No, I have 2.
What do you mean? I already chose 3, buddy.
You have 2 powers.
Oh, I thought we had 3. That's what I told you. I asked you.
No, you have 2 powers and a character.
Okay. Well.
So your last one doesn't count. So you're not 100 stories tall.
Well, never mind. I guess I just lost that battle then. So now that we're gonna debate here, so I'm gonna allow Matt to talk about his zombie, rage zombies that have an exoskeleton, and the fact. Actually, what was the last one? I forgot now.
I'm actually a ghost, and you can only
ghost.
kill me if you find my remains. Which, if there's
hundreds of you,
thousands or millions of me, you have to find each and every single one of those remains to actually kill us.
I thought my luck would have helped me on this one, but go ahead, man. I'm allow you to tell your thing, and I may have a chance. Maybe we'll see.
So one could argue, yes, we're rage zombies. Technically, now we're ghosts. So how could we possibly be in a robotic exoskeleton, right?
It would be a little weird. Yes.
But ghosts can possess, and they can possess machines. So that's what I'm going to go with. We're possessing the machines so they can still move. You see the ghost form in the machine. So we're possessing the machines. So technically, we would still have that physical exoskeleton machine,
right.
But we're possessing that machine.
Well, the problem is that even though, let's say, like the vampire, right, and has a visibility cloak, I think that's the only advantage I might have is because I could use that, but to a point. But like, for me to destroy the machine, and then I would have to find your physical remains, for that, zombie or whatever. It's not. It's going to be.
And we're not talking like 1 or 2 now. We're talking getting surrounded by hundreds or thousands. And yes, you could make the argument like, yes, a vampire could have strength. You could have a vampire that could change to a bat. Like whatever mythology like you want to use, great. But the thing is, yes, zombies are generally kind of stupid in general, but all they need to do is keep you busy long enough for the sunlight to come up.
True,
And
that's
you're
the
toast at
problem.
that point.
Yeah, and so they'll like
And they're going to rip your ass apart, whether you're a vampire or a werewolf or a human or whatever you are.
so, and that's the problem, right? So I can only hide for so long. Like I could keep this battle going for a while, but at the end of the day,
You still need to feed too.
right. So that's part of my issue is that if I'm facing off, let's say thousands or of basically hordes of zombies that are ghosts that have exoskeletons, realistically, I'm going to be done because, like you said, I'm going to have to feed. I'm going to have to, figure out a way to make sure I could still withstand, multiple hordes of zombies. Which for anybody, even just for like one mythical creature like a vampire, it's not like I'd have to be really, really smart and like I'd have to have like a battle plan. I'd have to have all these things, and it would probably take years or longer to even try to get to a point where I could like, you know what, I can, defeat all of you. But even then, like if I had multiple vampires versus multiple zombies, that might be different because
If your card said vampires or a coven of vampires, you might have had a chance.
Yeah, right.
Because then you could have made the same argument like a coven doesn't necessarily say there's 2 or 5 or 100 or 1,000.
Right. It could be a multitude, just like your rage zombies,
right?
Like Z, with the S and the being plural. But
knowing what I know of zombies, it's you usually don't just get 2, you get
multiple.
You horde.
You get a horde. Yeah. So I really don't have a leg to stay on because I'm looking at my cards. I mean, yeah, having 2 extra arms, cool.
Having 2 extra arms just gives us more food.
Yeah, exactly. Which doesn't. Which it's only going to help like 2 or 3 of you. But, I honestly thought this battle would be more like kind of interesting. But it's like
it's interesting for me, John.
Well, I'm glad it's interesting for you. I'm just like, well, okay, then I guess now we're, I hate saying it, but yes, Matt, I guess you would be King Geek of the Week. This is your time, buddy.
Great, that's awesome.
So, you want to do the applause then? Do you want to do that for yourself?
No.
So we're good. Oh, we're being humble. We're
good.
Wow,
I think people will know, once they hear the episode that finally, after 3 rounds, that I finally won.
Yeah, but here's the best part: we're still tied.
We are still tied because we had a draw.
We did. So really,
but luckily we have 5 weeks, so we can break the tie.
Well,
hopefully.
Well, hopefully. I mean, hopefully, but right, 5 weeks in total. So really, we have 2 more rounds to really decide. And if it really comes down to a death match.
So, as always, I want to also go over the cards that we would have had if we selected differently. So, I can tell you this, John. For whatever reason this week, I think you probably would have lost.
You think so? Let's see. What cards did you get?
The 2 other characters I had was Chuck Norris.
Okay.
Which you would have instantly lost either way.
Okay.
And the big monster from Cloverfield.
I think I've seen Cloverfield, but I actually don't know what the monster looks like off the top of my head.
I don't think anybody does.
I don't think anyone. Yeah, you're right. So
but you probably would have lost either way.
Okay, fine. Because I don't know. Do you know who Jack Torrance is? Because I don't.
From The Shining.
Oh. Okay, then
he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have stood a chance against rage zombies.
No, that's for sure. And the other one I would have had, which would have been an interesting one, would have been a samurai.
Not against zombies.
Well, not against zombies, but I mean, even Chuck Norris. I mean, that clearly would have lost too.
All right, so my powers and weaknesses, dude. I don't know what it is about this week, but the 4 that I have, I'll just read all 4 of them.
Okay.
Can summon and command the undead.
Wow, that would have been a really great one.
Bionic.
Yeah.
Could you imagine bionic rage zombies?
I mean, that would because I would have been dead no matter what.
Has been assimilated by the Borg.
Can you explain that? Because I don't really understand that. Like,
so the Borg is a race of species that basically they put tech into humans,
Oh,
and they assimilate them into their collective. But
Okay.
they make them like basically like in the Star Trek universe, like they're a particularly hard race to kill
okay.
because they have one main brain, but they also when they shoot them with phasers, they basically become accustomed to that level of that phaser level. So you have to like increase the phaser level just to be able to kill them.
So basically, as a collective, like again,
You're not just one, you're one of many.
yeah, you're one. Yeah, right. So like it could be
It's
so
one
many, it could be infinite.
it's one hive mind, so it's not like I think separately from you. We have the same brain, so if I'm getting attacked, you're instantly coming to my aid.
Well, the problem is too is that the only way to destroy that particular kind of being is like you'd have to go for the actual
The queen, like
the
if you think of
main
bees,
body. Yeah, you'd have to go. For
you have to
like
go
the
right
main
to the
person.
queen where they go, oh, where are we now? That kind of
Right.
thing. All right, the last one I have is can download any skill or martial art.
Yeah, that's funny how I had martial arts at one point, and yeah, that would have helped. So I accidentally chose a lot more than I would have liked to choose, but I'll just read them
boy,
anyways.
see, he's
So
cheating already.
I'm not cheating. So this is a funny one. Ready? Is a believer, okay, as in like Justin Bieber,
Oh,
and his convinced
okay.
opponent means Bieber bodily harm. I don't know what that would mean and how that would go, but it doesn't seem like it would go well.
That's definitely a weakness, John.
Has X-ray vision. That wouldn't have helped me really.
Well, maybe with the exoskeleton, but
Maybe.
not against 1,000 of them.
This is a funny one. Wearing a scuba suit like Scuba Steve.
Scuba Steve.
Um, this doesn't make any sense, but carrying way too many grocery bags. Like that's just a weakness.
That's
like,
just a vampire carrying too many grocery bags, wearing an invisibility cloak.
So, and then like the next one is this one's just it's Darth Vader, literally written all over it. Can choke you with their mind.
Okay,
Yeah,
that one might have been
that
helpful
might have been helpful.
for a short period of time.
Very short. This one, this is just stupid, but clothes are way too big. That would have been a hazard, really, especially as a vampire. Like
You'd be running away, tripping on you.
trying at yourself, and then the 100 stories tall, which, like again, that doesn't really count anymore.
Yeah, you
so.
definitely had way too many. John.
Yeah, well, I forgot. My bad. So either way, I still chose, and here we are.
Yeah.
So Matt, again, you being the King Geek of the Week.
King
you
Geek
go.
of the Week. I've worked hard for this.
Do you
Not
what?
really,
You want
not
to do some
really.
kind of speech? Because sorry, we have a lot to talk about in this episode.
I'll leave it as it is.
If you got an idea for a podcast, but maybe don't have the money to afford other memberships from other podcast sites, don't fret because there is a solution.
Oh, you're talking about that creepy dude that lives down the street, right? Like if you buy him a 30-pack and a couple of Reese's, like he'll host your podcast.
No, you weirdo. I'm talking about Spotify for podcasters, which actually used to be Anchor. There are no monthly membership fees. You can post directly to Spotify and many other popular podcast apps, and you can even do video podcasts.
Wow, that's cool. We were actually quite skeptical of doing the free option, but it is actually super easy. And we got our first episode posted directly to Spotify. And we are now posted on several different podcasting apps and are working towards monetizing our podcast.
So if you have a podcast idea, don't let it go to waste. Check out Spotify for podcasters to set up and start your free podcast today.
So does that mean I didn't need to buy that guy a 30-pack?
Ay, ay, ay. All right, Matt. So with phase 3, right? Because we've already talked about phase 1 and phase 2. I know with phase 3, there's a lot going on.
There
now.
is. And I do want to talk about first what the movies are that are in phase 3, because if you do look at, you look at phase 1, there's I think like 6, I believe there's 6 movies. And you look at phase 2,
Yeah, something like that.
there's only like 1 or 2 more movies than there is in phase 1. When you look at phase 3, there's a whole heck of a lot more going on within phase 3, because phase 3 really is the pinnacle end of the Infinity Saga.
Right. And it also, when we talk about when we talked about phase 1 and phase 2, I mean, yes, we were introducing characters. There was new, people that were coming in, but like this one has a lot more characters to help actually bring the very, we'll call the pinnacle point of the saga, like the very end of the um like end game, right? So like that is like the pinnacle point where you have pretty much almost every superhero so far that has been introduced into that one movie.
Right. So there are three kind of major movies within phase 3.
Okay.
There are a lot of movies within phase 3, but I would say that there are three major movies that happen
Okay. And
within phase 3.
so what would they be?
So I'm going to list all the movies. They're not in any particular order, as far as timeline wise.
Okay.
But we have Captain America: Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers: Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers: Endgame, and Spider-Man: Far From Home.
So I can tell you one major movie. The very first movie he mentioned was actually one of the pinnacle points to this phase, which was Captain America: Civil War, right? And I know Matt's going to go into that in a second. But I guess yes, Endgame would be the very last pinnacle one. But Matt, I'm curious, what do you think is the second pinnacle moment?
I mean, outside of the rest of the movies, because like even from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 and ongoing, all the movies are linked together as a whole. But outside of Captain America: Civil War, Avengers: Infinity War really was the pinnacle moment when every single one of the movies up to that point hit their pinnacle moment where everything got connected.
Well, see, I knew this. I just wanted to make sure you and I were on the same page for the 1, 2, and 3 pinnacle moments out of the whole
Right.
thing. Yeah.
And that's really, Infinity War really closed up all of the gaps that you kind of got glimpses of with all the other movies. Seeing the different Infinity Stones with all the different movies. Infinity War was really about Thanos grabbing all of those
Basically
for himself.
Well, and not only that, I mean, we'll go. Actually, you know what?
We'll go into those.
We'll go into those.
So normally, like phase 1 and phase 2, like I kind of read kind of those generic, funny, things, and I'm not going to read these because with phase 3 and phase 4, they are really, really. There's so much especially with phase 4. There's so much going on.
So then, why don't you and I have a discussion about each one and the pinnacle points of that movie?
We will, so instead of reading it, we're just going to talk about each one. So the first one that we do have is Doctor Strange, and what's really weird, and maybe I'm the only one, but I find it kind of weird to have a doctor, and he's not like a general practice doctor, he's a surgeon, but still, I would still find it kind of weird to have a surgeon be Doctor Strange.
I mean, but if you look at even back in the comics, I mean, technically, it's not wrong because he was.
It's not wrong, but just the name itself, you'd be like, hey, yeah, is there somebody else? But I guess it's more reputation because he was really good at what he did for surgery.
Well, and I could flip this. I mean, just for a second. So, I know in DC you got Hugo Strange, Doctor Hugo Strange, right? Who was a psychologist, basically, but totally different.
But he was a creepo.
He was a creepo, but I understand we're talking about Marvel. But I'm just saying, when you look at the name Strange, right? Versus a surgeon versus a psychologist, this mastermind, that kind of thing. At the end of the day, so be it. That's his name. That's what Marvel said. They're like, hey, you know what? It's gonna be Doctor Strange, and you're like, well, he's a surgeon. Oh, cool. And you're like, I really hope he's not gonna be my surgeon, personally, but maybe maybe he was one of the best. I don't.
And there is a little fun fact too. Maybe it's the geek or the nerd in me. I don't know, but if he were British, like the actor,
okay, Well, hold on.
in
Actually, technically, he is British.
in England, he actually wouldn't be called Doctor Strange.
So what would he be called then?
They would actually call him Mr. Strange with the acronym like FRCS, and I don't know what that stands for, but
I don't either.
they do not call doctors doctor in England.
So that's interesting.
They use the title Mister.
So, it's funny, like how in American culture we have, like, we always use the titles. Like, we're okay. Like, if you go to be um, like a doctor, or my God, sorry, like a doctor, or like even like, um, I can't even think of another one. Like, I don't know. Like, let's say you're a coach or something, like a coach, whatever, right? Like, it always feels like we need to have a title in front of our name, even though it's okay to be called, Mr. Strange, or Mr. Gunther, or Mr. Lally, for example, right? And so it's funny how we always have to feel the need to have those titles.
I think it's because he's a surgeon and not like a general practice. I think the general practice would have that PhD, and I think he's a surgeon, so he has a certain speciality, and I think that's why he might not have that doctor. But that's another, that's a whole nother
thing.
But we're introduced to him. He has an accident, and he basically has this surgery that now he can't use his hands. So now he has this kind of existential crisis where he cannot, he can no longer do the thing that he loves to do.
Right. And within the movie, like, I understand, like, in the very beginning, like, when he loses his ability to use his hands, he literally tries everything to figure out a way to get his hands to work the way it was before. And I know, when we're talking about this, like, I understand, like, for example, he goes to see, um, was it, is it, not, was it the one? No, what is the monk? Like, he actually goes, it's not really a monk, it's the main,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't remember
name. I'm pretty sure. I think it was like the chosen one, or something like that. But anyways, neither here or there. But when he goes to see this particular person, he doesn't realize that it's all like mystical and everything else.
Right. He just thinks it's like some process that's going to help him use his hands again.
Right. And it's like, it almost feels like when he goes there, he's like, oh, these are just a bunch of monks. Maybe it's just like a different style of like, whatever.
He's literally trying to do anything that he can to use his hands. And then he actually starts kind of going through, like, he's not really taking it serious at first. And when he does actually start to take it serious, then he finally understands, like, I can do magic. And that's kind of where the whole movie starts.
Right. And I mean, so one of the things that we'll mention now too, and I'm going to just kind of mention it now. So, like, we'll probably talk about even like the Infinity Stone. So, for example, the one thing that he does end up getting is called the Eye of Agamotto. Okay. And so that is the time stone. So it's that green stone, right? And it in the movie, it's basically, it looks like a giant eye,
Right.
and it allows him basically to stop time around him.
Yes. And he gets that for being, what's his title?
Oh, Sorcerer Supreme.
Sorcerer Supreme. So he gets that for being Sorcerer Supreme, basically. So that's basically Doctor Strange. The next one I have here is Captain America Civil War, which this one, there's a lot going on because basically, we find the government is really wanting to create, I guess, a registry, right?
So
for all of like the super powered mutant
right, capabilities, but the issue was it's actually in the second phase where it's actually in Age of Ultron where the Sokovia Accords happened because of that one event actually caused this movie to focus on that pinnacle point, because actually I believe it was Secretary Ross. So because again, if you saw the Incredible Hulk, he was General Ross, right? So he became part of the government, and he was one of the ones that started to force this. So the pinnacle piece to this is that because of the registry, it's either you're for it or you're against it, right? And so the ones that were for it would be Tony, right? Because he wanted to check, everyone, like, say, hey, you know what? We all need to be regulated, right? We need to held accountable for our actions.
Right. There needs to be checks and balances, and it on Tony Stark's side, it was Tony Stark, it was War Machine, Vision, and Spider-Man, and Black Panther was on that side.
Right, and then for the opposite side, which was against the registry, it was let's see, it was Cap, it was Black Widow, Ant-Man, Hawkeye. I'm trying to think of who else was in there in that moment, but
this lists Bucky.
Does it say Bucky?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted, there probably is a couple more that I can't think of, but anyways, like with that being said, right? So they're going against each other. This is the first time that the Avengers actually aren't getting along. This is like a pinnacle moment because this is actually how they, at some point, come to terms with it, and they realize that there's a bigger, greater threat out there. But this whole movie, this is where I will say this. Yes, and I'm gonna call my brother out on this one. It's the reason why I'm saying it is because in this movie, I'm not trying to go into like spoilers, but let's just say that Bucky was the one that was brainwashed at the time because he was Winter Soldier, and basically he kills Tony Stark's parents. Okay, and Baron Zemo was actually one of the ones that actually, brainwashed him into thinking that he was the Winter Soldier, like he had to follow certain codes, certain things like that, and he became again like the ultimate assassin. So with Bucky and Cap, being the best of friends, and Tony was like, why are you going against, me and this, even though he's your childhood best friend, basically, why are you going against me? We've been friends. We've been like good pals for a long time now. And, the reason why I say this is because, how this is where that ultimate debate is like, how can someone who is brainwashed understand what they are doing? Right. So like, in my opinion, like how could you brainwash somebody and hold them accountable for something that they had no idea what was going on at the time? And I understand that, people can say, okay, well, yes, you should hold them to accountability for that piece. But if you don't know what's going on and you have zero knowledge of what is happening, then how can you be held accountable for that piece? But anyways, the whole movie really, it's a really great, there's a great fighting scene in there, and it actually does a good job on, showing where the Avengers are at, and how basically Cap is, a prisoner, and basically kind of shows like what is going on in that rift in that time.
And this one, this is the first time that we actually do see Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Yeah, so this, and I agree. This is the first time that Spider-Man is like, we actually get to see him. We are like, oh, this is great. It's a great character design. Like it's what we would have seen in an MCU.
And he does catch Captain America's shield.
He does, and actually, it's the beginning of that fight when he catches it.
Yeah. And at the end of this movie, we also see, kind of Hulk flying off.
Yes, and this is where the Hulk, we don't know what he's doing.
We don't know where he's going. And that kind of leads us into the next movie, which is Thor Ragnarok, when we kind of like, we see, most of the Captain America side of the, Civil War fight either get captured or they go into hiding. And Hulk is, we find basically that he is this gladiator.
Right, he's on a battle planet is really the best way to call it. Yeah.
And Thor ends up at this planet.
Well, so we got to give it some preface here. So like technically Ragnarok, right? So the word Ragnarok in Norse mythology is the end of the world, basically, in their thing. So Surtur, right, and this is also a part of Norse mythology, like he's the one that actually basically becomes Ragnarok and destroys basically Asgard and all the realms and things like that. So part of the thing that in this movie is that Thor basically meets his sister, which was it Hel or Hela?
Hela. Yep.
So, and then Odin, if I'm not mistaken, does die because I think his spirit just kind of poofs and just like kind of goes off to the distance, and Loki and him are trying to like, figure out a way to stop Hela, in that sense.
Right, and that was before they knew that she was there.
Right.
And when he vanishes, she appears and basically takes over Asgard.
right, as the ruler piece to it. And
Yeah.
the issue was is like so Thor is like on a journey to actually no, that's right. He was trying to go to Asgard and he gets basically from like Heimdall's, um what was that called? The like the portal gate. Like I'm trying to remember what the actual name
I know
is.
the Rainbow Bridge, but I
Yeah,
don't know
Rainbow.
what the actual thing is
But
called.
anyways, like
Yeah.
what happened was is like it like somehow gets destroyed. He gets blasted off into space, and then he goes to basically this war planet where ironically Hulk is on.
And I will say this, like, call it for what you will. Like Jeff Goldblum's character, I didn't particularly enjoy.
Right.
I thought he was goofy as hell. Like I just that didn't do it for me.
I mean, but you got to think about it too. I mean, he's playing like a like one of the elder gods, right? Like one of
And I get it.
you
It
know.
just his character didn't do it for me. Did I like the movie? I thought it was I thought it was a good movie. I thought like some of the stuff with Hulk was, when they first showed him like kind of in that place where he was living when he wasn't
Yeah,
fighting, like some of that stuff was maybe not necessary. Like
right.
just the stupid dialogue that he had, like
But I mean, like for example, though, like
or stupid. Like it was just like it was dumb.
so so I know I wanted to mention this real quick. So if some of you probably don't know, but people who are MCU, fans would probably know this. So the Collector and what is Jeff Goldblum's character? Like I'm trying to remember his. Do you remember his name?
I don't remember his name. No.
Okay, but anyways, like in the comic books, like those two are actually brothers. Like they're actually related to one another. So, um, the funny thing is about it is though, not actually about that, but the one of the fight scenes in Thor Ragnarok is like Thor sees Hulk and he goes, "Oh, hey friend," and he's like trying to get him to do whatever, and Hulk's like, well, Hulk doesn't even know who the
He's a friend from work.
yeah, he's a friend from work, and they're both like going at it, and then like Hulk just like straights up, just punches the hell out of him, and he just like starts flying off, and he's like, "Hey man, what was that for?" Like
But this movie did drive one narrative, especially for Thor. Maybe not so much like for Hulk, and I, for what it is, like I love Hulk, and I wish he didn't get the short end of the stick every single movie that he's in. But like
yeah,
for Thor, this really drove something for Thor because I think that like once he kind of like fought the Hulk and they got back to Asgard and they're really fighting for Asgard and they're really like, Ragnarok is inevitable. Asgard has to fall.
right,
This is really, I think, where he comes into his full potential.
right, and he becomes the new leader of Asgard because he is the new Odin, and that's kind of like what in mythology, I guess, in a little ways, like that would be like how it would go is like Odin, of course, dies off, and then Thor would take over, for him.
Right.
And the one thing that like we start to introduce like different characters like Valkyrie, um, what is it? Not Brock, his rock buddy.
Oh yeah,
The
that
funny,
guy. Yeah.
basically, it's Taka Waititi is the guy who plays him. But you'll see him throughout the whole movies to come as well. But you see all these different characters just start to show up, and like it's actually pretty cool when Hulk, um, what I'm trying to remember in Norse mythology what his name is. It's the giant Fenrir, the giant wolf. Like it's that that giant wolf that comes out of
Yeah.
nowhere, and like Hulk's like, okay, come here, puppy, and he just like bops him on the nose, and it's like,
Well, first he jumps out of the plane thinking he's going to change into the Hulk before he lands.
oh yes, that too,
And then he just falls flat on his face.
yes,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, and the problem with like what Matt was saying too is that unfortunately Hulk, um, it doesn't get any better. Unfortunately, like
No,
especially later on.
he always gets the short end of the stick, and like you kind of never see the Hulk kind of get into his full potential because after this, you know, he basically, and we'll get into it when we start talking about Infinity War. You basically never really see the real Hulk after that.
No, and that's the problem. Like, and that's where I wish they would have like I really wish they would have done a movie, even just on like what he was doing. Like I said, in between the events of of Ultron until up till Endgame again, because yeah, you get it in Ragnarok a little bit, and that's okay to a point, but it doesn't really do him justice as a character because all he is like an actual supporting character. There is no like development, there is no nothing, and I mean the only thing you get to see, which we'll talk about later, is in She-Hulk, but it doesn't really do him any justice either in that
No, and
series.
he's still Smart Hulk on that, anyways. But um, the next one that we have is Guardians Volume 2, and
This one,
they're still, it's funny because like the Guardians up until this point are still unconnected to everybody else,
no, it's true. They have their own story, but the one thing, and I'll admit, like,
except for Thor, because they do meet Thor in this one
true. I will say this though.
with Rabbit and Tree.
Yes, rabbit and tree. So the funny thing is though about Guardians of the Galaxy like as a whole. So the first movie I loved. Right, I thought it was a great movie that how they portrayed it. The second one was not my favorite because it was like, you know, the thing was is Star Lord is actually meeting his father Ego, which
Ego, yeah.
is a living planet. Okay, and so like Star Lord starts to find out that he's not just human; he's also
Which
extraterrestrial.
I really would have liked if they explained that a little bit more in the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, in the problem with so the guy who plays Ego is Kurt Russell, right? And
Yeah.
it shows all the like how he came to Earth and does shows him his backstory, but it I
Which they
think it.
did really cool stuff making him look young.
Oh no no
Yeah,
yeah yeah
it wasn't all CGI, it was actually makeup, which
right.
was really cool to think about. Like in today's day and age where they use CGI for everything, they didn't use a lot of CGI to make him look younger. They actually did makeup.
And I think that when this movie, when you look at it, it's not like I said. It honestly probably out of Phase 3, it's not, in my opinion, it's not my favorite or like one of my favorites out of this whole phases because it shows some things, but it doesn't really, in my opinion, do any justice.
You know what this and I think you're right, and I think when you start thinking especially about Thor, this is where you start to see the downward spiral of the Thor character. Because this is the one where you start like seeing him trying to be like like overly funny, or trying to like he's like you can explain it and be like, oh yeah, he's trying to cover up some deeper pains, and maybe in Love and Thunder he's bringing it more out, but like even in Love and Thunder, which we'll talk about in the next episode, but really in this one, and then in Endgame too, there's parts in Endgame that like you're like, yeah, Thor, that's really
Yeah.
cool, but like I think with this movie, when you see Thor, like there's just a lot of things like you see how cool he is in Ragnarok,
Right.
and then you see him in this one, and he's like making these awkward jokes, like he can't seem to get over Jane Foster. And I get it, like love does weird things to people, but like
Right.
you just write a silly script for somebody, and you're like, this guy is Thor. He's the god of thunder. And even in the comic books, the guy was a pompous jerk.
Well,
Even when he was
well,
Thor.
well, technically, and we can. I'm not going to go like really into detail, but like if you look at Norse mythology and how the MCU did it, Norse mythology, this guy was big. Like I mean, he was a big, heavy set guy, had a beer belly, basically, had red hair, had all these other features, and like when you look at the MCU Thor, yes, he's blonde hair, he's got blue eyes, he's muscular, he's this and that, but what's funny though is like Thor in like mythology is actually a lot taller. Like his his actual physical appearance is totally different from this
Yeah.
movie to like mythology. But I agree that with Thor itself, it's like it doesn't really do him justice in this movie. And part of the like I said with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, like they tried to make a good movie. They showed like for example like Baby Groot, right? They showed um, I would say Drax and his like dry humor and stuff like that. And which it was it had some good funny moments, but like at the same time, it really didn't do a good job on like how is it really connected, down the road. I mean, we find out that yes, because of Thor, that's how they kind of meet up with, the Avengers later on, and that's how they kind of meet. But without that piece, it would have just been a movie, and it would have had no connection to what was
Right.
actually going on.
So I'm gonna skip the Captain Marvel and the Spider-Man for now.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, man. I mean,
For now.
okay. What are we jumping into?
We'll get into the Avengers. We'll talk about Infinity War and Endgame because they are connected. They didn't come out right after one
No,
another.
yeah.
But Infinity War was cool. It was one of those movies like when you get to the end of it, I think like you really couldn't swallow.
No, I mean, you know what? I agree because the funny thing. Well, I got to stop saying funny things because this one is actually a really sad moment.
Yeah,
because,
it's really like one of those serious movies, and like you kind of watch it, and from the beginning all the way to the end, Thanos is just destroying everything.
he is the ultimate annihilator of like. He's basically the one that just like destroys like little kids' dreams. Like that's literally
Right.
what it was. And when he brings in his what was it, the children of, was it children of Thanos?
Yeah,
Right. So these guys, I mean, they have particular names. Do I need to go into them? No, you can look them up.
you can look
separately.
them up. Yeah,
But the thing is about these guys, they have very unique abilities on them, and every Avenger is trying to basically find a way to get rid of them, so that way they can only focus on Thanos. And so they do that. They actually find a way to,
and what's interesting though too is like the beginning of this movie. You have to understand that like from Civil War up until the start of this movie, everybody is separated. They're not like together like they
No.
were for Avengers 1 and 2. They're not together. They're all separated. So you have the movie starting out where you have basically Asgard is in a ship and
Yeah.
Thanos's clan has already like taken it over, and I'm you guys can watch the movie, but they basically destroy the ships. And
They also
when the
kill a lot of
Guardians
people.
show up in this area, there's not supposed to be debris there. And they basically show up and like Thor basically like hits their windshield and they're like, "Oh, get him off, get him off, get him off."
Right, but I mean, but the funny thing is though about it is like, of course they actually help Thor, and then what happens with that little piece is like Thor, Groot and Rocket, they all they do something else, and then the rest of the
Right. And then Bruce actually like Heimdall, who was on that ship.
Hold on a second, Heimdall.
Yeah.
Heimdall.
Whatever.
Dull. Okay.
Whatever. He actually does before he dies, sends Bruce back to Earth,
right,
to Doctor Strange's
right vicinity.
Address. Yeah.
And so like with, so this is where, well, wait, no, is that in Infinity, not Infinity War, in Endgame?
No, that's in Infinity War because he's the one that tells them that Thanos is coming.
No. Well, right, but so what happened? I thought it was the chosen one. Like when when they go back in the past. That's
Endgame.
Right. Okay. So basically, oh no, you're right. He does get sent him back, but like yeah, it's Tony Stark. It's Doctor Strange and Bruce Banner, and then it's what is his name?
Because at the time, Tony wasn't talking to Steve Rogers.
Right, but no. But who was Doctor Strange's like partner in crime? It was his like
Wong.
Thank you. So Wong was also a part of that whole thing, and that's actually a character we forgot to introduce in the Doctor Strange. But yes, you're right with Cap. He's off with Black Widow, and I want to say
I don't even think he was really captain at that point. He was just doing.
So it was kind of
thing.
Well, right, because he got rid of the star. Right, he got rid of.
Well, what's interesting if you do watch everything, and I can tell you this right now because I actually looked it up on Disney Plus.
Okay, what is it?
Disney Plus, if you go to the Marvel area,
yeah, So like
and you kind of scroll down a couple like lines, they do have the Marvel universe in timeline like order.
oh
So
no, yeah, I knew that.
you can watch them in timeline order, but if you particularly look at Captain America's costumes, I'll say costumes, uniforms, whatever you want to call them. If you look at his outfits from every movie that he's in,
It's changed.
they progressively get more worn. So in
Right.
this one, it's very drab. Like the blue is not as bright as it was like in Civil War. Like it's
Right.
very drab. The star in the middle, it's still there, but it's not white.
Right. I mean, it's more of it's a black. It's
Right.
really, it's a black, and it's supposed to represent that it's like he's basically defeated. And actually, in this one, he actually has a beard, right? So he's
Yes.
showing that he's like, I'm not fully Captain America. Like he's not who we have known for him to be. And so a lot of these characters, because and that's the problem with Civil War is like because they all split, there's a huge difference in how the camaraderie is being shown in the movie, and because of that, that's how Thanos is taking advantage
Right.
because of that.
And this whole movie too, it reminds me of like most of the role playing games like Mass Effect, where you're playing you're playing these games, but like this movie was, it really just kind of starts with you see all the Avengers in different positions and different points, and they're really trying to come together to stop Thanos, but they're all separated, and you slowly see Thanos, beating Loki and Thor and Asgard in a whole. You
Right.
see him, obtain one Infinity Stone, then another, and then he slowly gets to the point at the end of the movie where the only one that's left is the one that's in Vision's head.
I really, and I kind of didn't want to mention that, but yeah, I understand that it is a pinnacle point, and unfortunately,
And that Wakanda battle, dude, is
oh,
like that is probably one of the best battles by far. Like
well, hold on. So you're telling me that one
with the
is
exception
even
of Endgame, because
okay?
Endgame
Okay,
hadn't come out at that point.
okay,
But
okay.
I'm talking like as far as fights with everybody involved.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree that yes, because you actually see Thor like okay, now mind you, I'm going to say this. He only has one eye at this point. We forgot to mention that piece because Hela actually is the one that is it Hela, right? Or is it
No, he actually gets a second one because Rocket gives him.
well, no, but like he doesn't have an eye in Ragnarok. But I'm trying to remember how he lost it exactly because I thought it was Hela that did it to him.
Yes, Hela did
Yeah.
it to him. Yeah.
So, but basically, he had to wear an eye patch. But yes, in this one, yes, because Rocket.
Rocket gives him the eye, and he just puts it in, and
it
Rocket's
looks
kind of
weird.
like, you probably should have cleaned that off before you
Well,
put it in.
Well, and I'm pretty sure Rocket stole it. So again, it's kind of like a whatever moment. But like, what's funny about that too is like Thor is off and he's visiting this. It's gonna sound weird, but a giant dwarf that's basically in charge of this forge, and he's trying to um, recreate Mjolnir because the problem was in Thor Ragnarok, which we forgot to mention, Mjolnir is not actually a thing anymore. Hela destroyed it in like 2 seconds, so he doesn't have a hammer, like he has nothing, and so he takes some of some of Groot's body because of the tree like form, and then he finds similar metal to what Mjolnir was.
Well, he has to they basically go to this forge, which is supposed to be surrounding a star.
Right.
And the star is supposed to be active, but the star is dead because Thanos basically killed all the dwarfs and left this one alive and put molten metal over his hands.
Right. And so
now he has to reactivate the dead star, and they basically make Stormbreaker.
right, which is his new like it's a taller version,
Right.
right? And so but in that one battle scene that I was going to try to mention is like when he's like wow, and he like literally pounds the ground like there's no tomorrow. Like it was a powerful scene, and
Yeah.
it like wipes everybody out for the most part. And all like we'll mention Black Panther because that is a huge piece to this as well. Um, but like everybody that was in Wakanda at the time, like they were facing off, everybody. So like Cap, Black Widow, Bruce Banner, now Thor with Groot and everybody. I mean, there's multiple of people there.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, Tony Stark and basically Guardians of the Galaxy are doing their own thing. Like we see them, but we don't actually know what's going on.
And they actually go to, and we're probably not going to be able to mention every single movie that's in this phase because we're running out of time here, but they're basically just trying to stop. So they actually go to, Thanos' planet because one, kind of like an idiot, Spider-Man does get kind of caught on the ship that's going up into space now.
Right. I mean, that was in the beginning of the movie, but yes.
But that's where Tony Stark ends up, and then the Guardians are also trying to find Thanos. So they, they kind of interact, and they kind of have a funny interaction. But they, Thanos actually does go there, and they come, I think, probably within millimeters.
Oh yeah.
Of the gauntlet coming off of Thanos' arm.
Like they were the closest. But the problem,
the problem being the sacrifice that Black Widow had to take to get one of the stones. Well, that was an Endgame.
That's totally different.
The sacrifice that Thanos had to get the red stone. Really?
No, it was the orange stone. It was the soul stone. So yes, it was Gamora. It was his daughter,
right?
And so that's why Peter Quill or Star-Lord really is actually trying to go after him.
They were in love. So Peter was really wanting to find out where she was,
right? And he finds out, and then basically he goes basically crazy and just tries to get at him. But
so the pinnacle thing of Endgame was Thanos. His whole plan was that basically the whole universe is overpopulated. And in order for the universe to survive, we have to, or he has to eliminate at least half of the, all populations so that everybody else can survive. Because everybody is consuming everything.
Wait, did you say half or all?
It's half of all living.
Well, no, but I thought you said all at first. That's why I was asking.
No, it's half of all living.
Yes, I understand half of all living. Anyways.
But that was like his whole thing was, eliminating half of all living things so that the other half can survive and thrive.
Right. And they're I'm going to call them the chosen ones.
Right. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Infinity War, then
you should probably not.
You probably should have already seen it. But at the end of Infinity War, he does do the snap. And he does eliminate half of all living life on not just Earth, but every single planet within the universe.
And basically, I think what Matt and I are going to do, we're probably going to be talking about Endgame kind of briefly, and then we'll probably before that, we'll probably just mention the other movies, like kind of like a quick little thing for it, so that way you guys at least know like who they are. So like for example, like Black Panther, right? It's the first time since I think it was it Winter Soldier? Right? I think it was Winter Soldier. Like that was the first time like where he gets his own movie and you basically get to see how T'Challa becomes Black Panther and is a very, like I said, with Avengers Infinity War is a very pinnacle piece to that because he does end up helping in the long run. And unfortunately, probably right after Endgame and all that, and he doesn't have much of a role after that. But Black Panther is a huge character and has been, especially in the comic books. But again, watch the movie. I can guarantee you it's a great movie to just watch by yourself or with a couple friends, whatever.
So, I mean, as it pertains to, Endgame, Captain Marvel, I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with Phase 3, really. Well, I mean, like, the movie's good. At the end of the movie, she gives Nick Fury a pager.
Well, and the funny thing about Captain Marvel is like it shows the backstory. It shows how she becomes it,
and that's back. That goes back to the 90s,
right? And so like it does make sense once you watch it because it actually kind of does go into phase 3 a little bit. But the thing is like, it shows the, like I said, the backstory, kind of like with Black Panther, shows the backstory of who she be, like how she becomes Captain Marvel, how that story progression happens, and then like he was saying about Nick Fury, it actually, it's a funny scene, but it shows Nick Fury on how he lost his eye.
Yes.
And I'm not going to spoil that, but if you watch it, you'll understand.
Yeah, but I mean, you cannot watch Captain Marvel and not miss like the whole story of Endgame. You know what I mean?
No, but I mean, it does at least explain why she's there.
It does. Not that it matters, because I mean, she does play a big part in saving Tony, but other than that, like,
all right, fine, whatever.
She doesn't play a huge part in.
All right, then fine. Go ahead and talk about Spider-Man.
The long and short of it, but we do have to talk about Endgame before we talk about Spider-Man.
No, we don't. Wait, well, hold on a minute, because technically Spider-Man is well before Endgame. In the second one, or at least the first one. The first one actually came out well before the.
Spider-Man, he's dealing with the death of Tony.
No, the first one was not the dealing. What was it? No, it was after Civil War. Like that movie came out right after Civil War, so it wasn't the death on Tony. He was dealing with the death on Tony much later.
I think you got the wrong movie, my friend.
I'm pretty sure that's not the case because there's a second one, which is the first one was when he was with Tony. The second one.
This is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Homecoming was his first movie, if I'm not mistaken. And then it was Far From Home, which was after Endgame. And then it was. Wait. No Way Home. Sorry. That's the.
No Way Home was.
That was the most recent. No, but Homecoming is his actual first movie. So, yes, Tony Stark is still alive. Very much alive. So, but anyways, Spider-Man, right? So it shows him right after Civil War. And it shows that Tony is his mentor, right? Which is a good thing, right? And it shows him, becoming, Spider-Man, to existence, right? So Tony actually gives him a suit. He becomes, not saying like Ultimate Spider-Man, but it gives him more of an upgrade, right? And it allows him to be more technological, does all this. And it actually shows Michael Keaton as Vulture at the time. And so, again, watching the movie, it helps him build the character. You get to see MJ. I can't even remember his buddy's name, like it's because it's not Harry anymore. It's someone else.
Right. Yeah.
But anyways, with Spider-Man, it develops his character before Endgame because that was the one movie that at least helped him build it up. I mean, it doesn't really like help the story with Endgame as much. It just kind of gives you more of a backstory on the character, and then once you watch Endgame, then you see how he's still kind of young and innocent because he hasn't gone through the trials and tribulations as what the Avengers have already done for many movies to come. Now let's talk about Endgame.
So, yeah, Endgame, we kind of have, it's 5 years basically after we have everybody dealing with, half of the population on Earth at least, basically vaporizing. And, we see Cap kind of, he's kind of managing a group.
Yeah, so Steve was taking a different approach. He was taking it more of like as a human level. So it'd be like more like a therapy session,
like an AA group or something like that.
That's exactly what it looks
like. And Thor was drinking and playing games and yelling at kids.
I think. So actually, no. I think it's Korg. That's his name.
Korg. Yeah.
So yeah, because
I think they both were though.
Yeah, they well. So the worst part is this is when we were talking
about Fat Thor, yeah.
And so where he's wearing sweatpants and he looks like basically a bum, and like Korg's just like, hey man, how you doing? Yeah, come on down. You want a beer? You want to hang out, play some video games with us? Kind of make it all funny like. And then Thor's like, yeah, give me some more beer. It is like he's just trying to do his thing.
So you basically have this event that happened. Thanos, after he did the snap, went into hiding. And immediately, like, they go in, they try to get together and, like, we have to try to fix this somehow.
So, so the beginning part is not showing Steve as much. Like, that's later
No,
on.
It's only a few of them that are trying to do this, and they're trying to get more people involved into it. But
yes.
What ends up happening, though, is they do find Thanos.
Well, it should be, like, a little after Infinity War. It wasn't, like... immediately.
It was 5 years after.
No. No, it wasn't. In the beginning scene when they're all like hanging out, and it was well before Thor became fat. It had to be like a little bit after Infinity War, not by much. But then they found him, like you said, and then yeah, because like it was 5 years later from that event when they all found him, and basically, I'm gonna let Matt say it, but when Thor, shh,
Well, they cut his head off.
right.
Yeah.
But that's when, yeah, because Thor was still actually skinny, or not his fat self at that
Right.
point.
So yeah, he was still who he was. Yes, but they did basically cut his head off, and they basically killed Thanos, and discovered, I think, after the fact, that he used the stones again to destroy the stones.
Right. So there
So
was
now
no
the
chance.
stones no longer exist on their timeline. And
Right.
now Thanos is dead, so now it's not like they can do really anything about it. And that's where you have this, like, 5 years later, you find like everybody's kind of
Like broken up, and they all
broken up and kind of doing their own thing. And we have, Ant-Man, who's
well. And so we didn't actually talk about Ant-Man because that was the other thing. So Ant-Man really at this time he was
like I said, we're not going to be able to talk
No,
about
no, I know,
everything,
I know.
but because we are running out of time. But
I thank you. But what I'm saying is like Ant-Man in itself, right? So in the second one, he works with the Wasp, right? And he's again, watch the movie, you'll more likely understand what I'm about to say. But like really towards the end of the movie, is he gets sucked into the quantum realm,
right,
and he gets stuck there. What he thinks is only, let's say, 5 seconds, or sorry, what he, yeah, right, what he thinks is like maybe like, sorry, 5 minutes, not 5 seconds, is actually 5 years, and so he doesn't know what the heck is going on at this point.
yeah. So, and he's, I think it was like, what, a cat that was like walking on a
Oh, yeah,
console
yeah,
or
yeah.
something, and
And
he,
just
he comes out, and he instantly tries to like find the Avengers, and he's like, sitting outside, and
he's like, hi.
he's like, "Hey guys," and I think Black Widow was sitting
So-
there, and he's like, "Do you
yeah,
know this idiot?"
yeah. So it was Black Widow, it was Cap, and I think it was War Machine at the time when they were.
Yeah.
all
So,
together.
long story short, like, he kind of goes into his story of like how he was in the quantum realm, and they're like, "Yeah, whatever, you were in there for 5 years." He's like, "No, it was only 5 minutes for me." And they kind of go to Tony, and he's got his own family, so he's kind of not interested. But what they kind of like do for Tony, and Tony's a creator. So, but what they do is they kind of create, like, they put this mustard seed into his brain, where they
Yeah.
go, "Hey, we have this idea for time travel," and he's like, "Don't be an idiot. Like, you can't do that. You're gonna break the
The time continuum, and
space continuum, and you're gonna destroy basically the universe."
right. And then they Tony does come around and actually decides to do it, but he does it with Bruce Banner, which they all meet up with him and later on. But they make basically like time suits that allow them to go to back to different points in their history for like the time stone, the soul stone,
Right.
the power stone. Like they all do their own little thing, and they all, which is unique. And so I think one of the things we mentioned about like Hulk, for example, he goes back and tries to get the time stone, and this is where he sees, I think it's the chosen one, and he like has like an out of body
Right.
experience.
She completely hits Banner out of the Hulk body.
Right, and like everyone does like their own thing, and so like for example, like this is where I'm gonna hate saying it, Matt, but this is where you see America's ass, right? So you see, like Captain America versus basically his younger form, and he's like, yeah, that is a nice ass, It was like a little quick moment, but
Yeah.
but anyways, like everyone is trying to get each of the stones back, trying to get everything back in order, and it's funny that Thanos actually starts to figure out that there was a different version of, it wasn't Gamora, it was her sister. Um, I'm terrible with names right now, but anyways, she finds out that there's another version of her, and Thanos is starting to realize that something's happening. And on top of that, like for example, Tony goes back into like I think it was back into like the '60s, right? I think he meets his father, or he sees him and he talks with him a little bit.
Yeah.
So like everyone has like their own little like unique kind of quirky moments. But with the movie itself, when they find all the stones, um, actually, there was one thing I was going to mention, but I'll see if I can remember it in a minute. Um, the the part that this whole thing is actually very like a pinnacle piece to it is that unfortunately Tony Stark does sacrifice himself. He does end up, you know, ultimately, you know, taking the hit, right? Because I think they did it once with Hulk, and like he basically burned half of his body because he was holding it in his hands, and they had like a gauntlet, like it was a Tony Stark gauntlet looking thing, and you know it burns his body, and it doesn't allow him to like basically move, and it basically like it almost like permanently damages him. But find out, spoiler, it didn't actually matter because apparently he was all fine later on in time. But Tony Stark, you know, with his nanotechnology, like he finds a way to like embed it into his suit, and he does ultimately get all the stones as he's holding Thanos at the time, and then he snaps, and then of course change of history. But I know the pinnacle moments, right, is um, like for example, you know, the I would say probably one of my favorite scenes out of the whole movie, and I'm going to try to be quick on this, is when Cap, okay, and he's sitting there with a broken shield, okay, he's like half a shield, you know, and I'm pretty sure he has Mjolnir in his hands in that moment, and he's looking out and he hears the, you know, the Doctor Strange kind of like open portals for like all these people coming out of nowhere, and they're all sitting there, and they finally come in, and then he's just like, Avengers, assemble, and it just like everybody doesn't matter who they were just going at Thanos and his army, and they kept going at. It was just like a moment that I'm pretty sure you and I were in the movie theaters together.
I actually the moment right, I think before that, before he says that though, it's that moment when you hear Falcon, and for what it's worth, it's not so much of like the character or the, well, it is the character.
Yeah.
It's not so much of like the actor or whatever you want to put on it.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of the Falcon. I'll just put it out there. Like I said, it's not the actor, it's not like anything, it's just the character itself. But when he's you know, you see Captain, he's standing there, he has the Mjolnir, and then you hear the on your left.
Oh,
like,
yes.
You're like, oh boy. But then, like, for me, like, that pinnacle moment is like when you, like, as soon as he says that, and like you start seeing the portals open, and literally every hero in Marvel, even like you pause like some of those scenes, you can see Howard the Duck in there.
I didn't know that, and I feel like I should watch it again.
You can see like characters that like you've only seen in backgrounds,
yeah,
like
itty bitty, yeah.
But everybody is like united, and that's like when Endgame. That like those scenes are really cool because like that's really the pinnacle fight, I think.
No, I agree,
Yeah.
and I mean like when I think the funny one was like when Cap picks up Mjolnir and like Thor looks at him and he's like, I knew it, you know, and he like because it was like when in Age of Ultron, I think we mentioned it. It was like
he never did because he was like
because he wasn't worthy, but he was because he saw the movement and he's like, oh, and then he's like, oh, I guess I can't do it, and then but anyways, so with this movie, I would say we could talk about this for a while, but I will say that it's one of my favorites. I think it does a really good job on showing all of the characters in Marvel and how they unite on a front, and you know how they. So it still surprises me to this day. It is the only movie I feel like in history when it comes to like you know superhero movies that has actually done a good job on bringing a multitude of characters from everywhere into one movie, and for the amount of screen time that they had. Like, and there's a reason why it's what is it, second best of all time, or is it now the second best?
Yeah, and I think it's really. I mean, it does really end, you know, the whole Infinity Saga. But I mean, with Infinity War and Endgame, realistically, yes, they are two movies, but they're one story,
right?
And there's just so much happening within Endgame, you know. With the whole like Thanos thing at the end, like you kind of like, well, how was Thanos in the end if he was killed in the beginning? Well, the Thanos you see at the end is the 2014 Thanos.
Well, yes, that was the
When
Thanos.
he, when you see Nebula and then
That's who it was. I was trying to remember who that was. It was Nebula.
the Nebula from 2014 and the Nebula that you see in Endgame, they basically switch. So
Yes.
when Nebula goes back, it's the 2014 Nebula, and then she takes over the whole machine.
Right.
So Thanos, like she allows Thanos to basically come back as well.
And so that's how they. That's why I needed your help with that. But I was trying to remember the name. So yes, Nebula was the sister of Gamora, like they're adopted, whatever. Um, but yes, like that is the moment that Thanos realizes that there is something going on and that he needs to somehow stop this because he understands that clearly he didn't do his mission per se. But the part of that movie, unfortunately, is like we had multiple heroes were sacrificed, unfortunately, with and how
Yeah,
everything worked. Because, and I hate saying it, so my boy Cap, right? Like
he gets super old,
he gets super old, and then pretty much he goes off to the distance. Guess what? You don't see him again.
Like Mr. Rogers old.
He actually kind of looked like Mr. Rogers, which is pretty sad. But like in that movie, you got Tony Stark, you got Cap, you got Black Widow. Um, that I mean, yeah, I mean, I would say those are oh no, sorry, Gamora. I can't forget Gamora in some ways. Those were the characters, unfortunately, that made the ultimate sacrifice. And that's why that movie, honestly, because that's funny. Matt and I watched this in the theater together. I'm pretty sure he may not agree, but I was a baby at the very end. Like it was pretty sad. Like in my
I
personal opinion.
I did my best to hold it together, but yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Real man.
it was tough. It was tough. But like Endgame, John, it's time to end this game.
Oh, you mean end the show? Okay, so if that's the case, all right. So we want to give you actually a couple updates. So Matt and I, we did post this on, um, I believe, on our Facebook, and we actually have it on our website. So one of the things that we actually did was partner up with two brands, right? So one of them was Dubby. It's an energy kind of replacement like drink. You can basically, it's like if you ever heard of Sneak, right? So it allows you to not have to have like an energy drink or like coffee or something like that. So but I'll talk about W. So like we have um so actually my bad. Their website is www.w.gg. Okay. So their coupon code that we have is GFTM23, and it actually gives you 10% off of all of your total order and checkout, right? So when you look at the website, um, it actually shows, W as one of our partners as well. So that way you can actually go there and make sure that you type in the GFTM 23, and that way you can actually see it. The other partnership that just recently happened was Reaper Apparel Co. Okay, so this one, it's a unique one. So it's a clothing brand that I found that actually talks about mental health, kind of like illnesses and awareness, and it does a really like cool, creative kind of like feature. So like a lot of their clothing, it's probably a lot of clothing that some of you may or may not wear. I understand it kind of like hits or miss the target, but a lot of it's like skull based, but it's unique on how they do things, and I think they do a really good job on, showing the like the mental health awareness. So I know that unfortunately with our society nowadays, it's becoming more and more prevalent, and I think for us, we do want to find partnerships like that that actually talk about real, major issues like that. And so it's also the same code. It's GFTM23. I believe that also gives you a 10% discount code. Again, we'll be updating that on our website very shortly. Um, and then when it comes to our social media, right? So again, right now we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn. Um, we want to make sure that you guys can connect to us, whether it's again the website, any of those platforms. Again, we want to hear from you, right? And we want to make sure that your voice gets heard. And again, make sure that when you send us a message, make sure it's actually something that we want to, talk about, not just unfortunately stupid stuff, right? Because that's not what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to make sure that we have ideas so that way we can give you guys, some feedback or just another show ideas we can do down the road, right? But to end this, right, we want to thank you guys for liking, sharing, following us, again, listening, and as well as supporting us, right? Because without you guys, we can't do our job, right? Because we need listeners. We still need that 1% of Ireland, right? And I'm hoping that these guys, if they listen, right, I'm hoping you'll go all the way to UK, all over Europe. Just start spreading the word, man. We want to see if we can go global. I want to see that. Okay. As always, thank you.
Stay geeky.